it's Robin Riggs, your practical health coach. So I just flashed a quote, "Every bite that you take either fights or fuels disease." If you've been in our group for a while now, hopefully you're starting to realize how true that is. We live in a world where diseases like heart disease, cancer, autoimmune are becoming increasingly prevalent. It's no surprise that while packaged and processed foods filled with chemicals are on the rise, so are these diseases. We simply can't take real food out of our diet, replace it with man-made chemicals, and assume that we're not going to have any consequences. We're going to talk about excitotoxins today, which are much less exciting than they sound. This is something I really want you to know about. I want you to know what these are and how to avoid them. Excitotoxins are food additives that have a negative effect on our brain. We have something called the blood-brain barrier. Its function is to bring blood to the brain and spinal cord while also protecting the brain from unwanted toxins. It's semi-permeable, meaning that it allows certain nutrients through and then it blocks harmful ones. Excitotoxins are chemicals added to processed foods that have the ability, in many cases, to pass through that blood-brain barrier and alter your brain chemistry. I'm going to pause here for a second because I want the gravity of that to sink in. We're eating foods that have man-made chemicals in them which penetrate the blood-brain barrier that was meant to protect our brain. Is this a good thing? No. So let me break this down and tell you what they are, how they affect your body, and which foods are classified as excitotoxins so that you can avoid them. Let's look at the word excitotoxin. Excite means to stimulate and toxin means death. So excitotoxins literally stimulate your brain cells until they are so overactive that they die an early death. The brain cells are firing at a ridiculous rate. A couple of hours later, those brain cells die. Other types of excitotoxins can block neuroreceptor sites, leading to reduced brain function, slower thinking, brain fog, and memory loss. So we obviously want to avoid excitotoxins when we can. Those include, first, high fructose corn syrup. Even if it weren't considered an excitotoxin, high fructose corn syrup is horrible for you. First, it's a derivative of corn, which means it's likely GMO. Second, it's super high on the glycemic index, so it sends your body into a tailspin and often results in accumulated fat in the body. A study conducted by UCLA on rats found that high fructose corn syrup can slow the brain and hinder memory and learning. Remember, it's also an excitotoxin, so it's stimulating brain cells to death. We want to avoid high fructose corn syrup. It's found in processed foods and drinks, and sadly in lots of items that kids consume. Candies and processed baked goods, even in some kids' foods that are meant to look healthy, like yogurt, some applesauces, canned fruits, other foods like mac and cheese, salad dressings, granola bars. Be careful here and read your labels. The next excitotoxin is MSG, monosodium glutamate. It's a flavor enhancer added to thousands of foods that you and your family probably eat. Common issues related to regular consumption of MSG are obesity, eye damage, headaches, depression, and more. MSG is in most processed foods. It has so many different names. You will likely not see it listed as monosodium glutamate, but it's found in many canned soups, crackers, processed meats, salad dressings, frozen dinners, and more. Let's move on to the next excitotoxin, which is food dyes. I'm pretty passionate about trying to avoid this one. My daughter Ella actually gets a pretty bad headache when she consumes food dyes, which is one of the regular side effects of food dyes. And I'll tell you, for a kid in today's world, you have to really work hard to avoid these. Every birthday celebration at school with cupcakes or cookies that have frosted coloring, nearly every piece of gum and candy has food dyes. Think about M&Ms, lollipops, Sour Patch Kids, gummy bears, some yogurts and popsicles, ice creams. Food dye is everywhere, even in kids' ibuprofen. Food manufacturers obviously think that kids are incapable of liking foods that aren't bright in color. If I see a food or treat that has any type of unnatural color, I usually look at the label. If the red isn't from something natural like beet juice or real strawberries, if it has a color and number combo, I'm putting it back down. Let me read you a quote from Food Babe's Facebook page. This is pretty unreal. This is a perfect example of how detrimental food dye can be. So a mom wrote into Food Babe to let her know how much she appreciates her work on trying to reduce artificial food dyes in food. Her quote says, "Just a thank you note for the post on food dye. My daughter was diagnosed with Tourette syndrome because of severe tics when she was 6. She was put on medication that helped. One day the medication changed, and the only difference was the new medication had yellow dye. Suddenly the medication that had worked did nothing for her. The doctor made the connection and suggested that we take her off medication and remove all dyes from her diet. Overnight, the kid who was paralyzed by tics was a completely different person and tic-free. She had been diagnosed with ADHD, that too was gone. It's hard to avoid, even Motrin you have to search for the dye-free stuff. And she's so sensitive to it that we can't use hand soaps, shampoos, etc. that have dye. As soon as we do, she tics again." That story really bothers me because so many kids could be going through the same thing and having many adverse side effects from food dye, and their doctor, parents, or themselves would never identify that, and this is something that they're going to have to deal with for the rest of their lives when they could have simply eliminated food dye from their diet. Try to educate your kids on the harmful effects of food coloring. I use a little bit of psychology here. If we see brightly colored candy, for example, when we're in the store, I'll generally point to it and ask my kids if they know why it's so bright. They'll answer food dye, and then we'll both kind of crinkle our noses. I'll say, "We choose not to eat that because it hurts our brain." I'm not in the habit of trying to vilify food to my kids, but when it comes to added sugars and food dyes, I think it's so important for them to know how damaging they can be. Kids learn through consistent reinforcement of the same message, but you have to be careful not to be too heavy-handed at the same time. We don't outright ban these items, but we try to avoid them as much as possible. And we use real-life examples as learning opportunities. The next food classified as an excitotoxin is trans fats. But happily, this is an area where you don't have to worry too much. Regulations have been passed, and trans fats are slowly but surely being taken out of fast foods and processed foods, where they used to be very prevalent. Next up is aspartame. Aspartame is a toxin that does not belong in your body, yet it's found in more than 6,000 products. Sodas, chewing gums, sugar-free desserts, yogurts, and even some cough drops contain it. But the main foods are diet sodas, diet drinks, and diet foods. If you see a label that says sugar-free, but it's still a sweet food, be wary because it probably has the chemical sweetener aspartame or another chemical sweetener in it. Aside from the damage it can do to your brain, aspartame is also linked to cancer. So please think twice before you reach for those fake sugar packets. They were developed so that you could sweeten your drinks without the calories, but they are man-made chemicals and they're damaging your brain. As much as we talk about reducing sugar, I would rather you reach for the real sugar packet because it's going to be less damaging to your brain. I would prefer for you to use a natural sugar like honey, agave nectar, maple syrup, and use a small amount of it. So let me go back over the list of common excitotoxins. We have high fructose corn syrup, MSG, food coloring, trans fat, and aspartame. All of these items are found only in processed food. So here's yet another reason to focus on whole foods, to find a way to appreciate real food. Even shopping for your food, prepping it, and cooking it. Yes, processed food is convenient. Fast food and pre-packaged foods are cheap and easy, but at what cost? There comes a point when you know too much and you just have to put a stop to it. You value your body and your mind too much to forsake them for convenience. It can be pretty hard to eat 100% clean and 100% whole foods most of the time, but try to aim for 85%. You'll be way ahead of the game and you'll probably notice a big difference in your body. Being a member of Whole Nourished helps here because you're not making these changes alone. You're fighting a good fight along with lots of other kick butt people. So keep on trucking, ladies. I'll see you next time.